My best friend is having a baby, so I had to figure out what's the best thing I can make in time for the baby's birth, which was in less than a month. But I ran into some issues, and the due date might be coming a little sooner than I thought.
I looked at my phone and I had missed FaceTime call, missed text from my friend.
So, what does a newborn baby need? I definitely wasn't comfortable making a crib, especially with the timeline, but I wanted this to be a slightly larger piece. I didn't want to show up with a cutting board or some coasters or something that didn't have as much thought and was just easy to make. I wanted to make something that held some weight and was functional, a piece that could grow up with them and their baby, especially during the early stages of life. So, after some careful thinking and some light Googling, I landed on making a toy box. Now, like I mentioned in the previous video, I just moved back in with my parents, and while I may not be having a baby, I am figuring out things for myself. One of those things I had to figure out was, where am I going to get lumber now? I'm not very far from where I used to live in Pasadena, but the lumber yards I used to visit are definitely a little bit more out of the way now. And because I'm starting this new venture into the woodworking community, I thought it'd be a good idea to see who my local suppliers are and start networking with more vendors. Networking and really just talking to people is my favorite parts about the film industry, so it only makes sense to do it here. So for this project, I decided to visit Austin Hardwoods in Orange County, California, and see what they might have. I know I wanted to pick a lighter species because to me, the essence of a newborn is really light and soft, maybe a little pastel-y. And I'm not a painter, I really don't like painting furniture and I'm not really good at it, so I was definitely sticking to using the wood's grain pattern and color tone to make the decision on species. Some options I had in mind were maple, white oak, poplar, ash, and maybe a couple others. But I also knew I wanted it to have a little bit of personality because it's for a baby, and I think babies like things with visual interest. Well, at least if a baby had an opinion on the species of wood their toy box was made out of, I think they want something to be a little visually interesting. Anyways, while browsing, we found these boards of ash with this darker, redder, browner strip in between, and then found that matching brown color on some other boards. So it seemed like a good idea to play on that contrast and let the wood speak for itself. So now that the material was sorted, a little bit about the design. I knew I wanted to try and do a waterfall design around the carcass, but my shop is pretty small. If I were to have done the grain wrap all the way around, I'd have to make a panel that was 104 inches or about 2,642 millimeters long. So instead, I decided to have the grain wrap on the sides and front, but the back be different since that's not the show face. And, well, even a panel that long was still a little difficult to maneuver. Okay.
Sweet. Late last night, I woke up because I need to take a shit, and I looked at my phone and I had missed FaceTime call, missed text from my friend. So I call him back, and as I'm on the shitter, newborn, freshly popped out baby. So I've got to finish this toy chest a little bit faster. Not super big rush, but I do want to get it done so that way they have some place to put her toys.
So now that the baby is out and starting to experience life, I've got to cut these miters and assemble this box so I can get over them ASAP. One big problem with having such a small space is that I can't fit a cabinet table saw in here, which I never had anyway, so it's not really much of an adjustment, just want to try and stir up some drama, but the solution is pretty simple: track saw. There's always another solution to get something done, whether you have a big space or a small space, and making long miter cuts on a job site table saw would never really be possible anyways, so a track saw is a totally valid way to get things done, and I have the Festo version, so I better be using it. Now that I've used my Festo track saw to cut the miters, my Festo orbital sander to pre-sand the interior panels, and of course my Festo domino to get my panels lined up, surely nothing can go wrong. Well, this is a YouTube video, and no matter how much money I spend on my tools, I'm still not a super great woodworker, and let me just let myself explain in real time.
Basically what happened was I did my glue up. I used box clamps that I have. Originally what I was going to do, because I have had so much success with this, is just using the offcuts from the miters and super gluing them on because that's a pretty strong connection. It's just easy sanding after because that'll close the miters really well. For some reason, while I was gluing up, I decided to just use these guys, and in the middle of the stress and everything, I'm like, let me just keep going. It's It's like coming together-ish. Now I've got some gaps in my miters, and about 15-20 minutes later, after just like decompressing from it, I was like, let me just put some small clamping blocks on and see what happens. And I did it, I clamped it, and then some of the joints closed a little bit more. It's just a little frustrating because that was my first thought, and then just in the middle of it I just decided to forego it. But yeah, it's really just a learning experience, and this was paid commission from somebody. Then I would probably just redo this, but this is kind of more a time sensitive thing, and it's not too bad anyways, and it's one of those things that no one's gonna notice unless I point it out. Gonna do my best to try and fill those miters the best way I can and continue on with the build. Why did I do that? It's so good. It's like even the tiniest bits. I was texting my friend Daniel, and he said, oh, you can totally just try and just clean up the glue squeeze out after. So I just flooded the joint, the open joint, with glue, the open miter, put the clamping gauze on, squeezed them, and I'm getting squeeze out. It's a little better on this side than it is on that side. I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be way better than it was before. Learn something new every day. I think this is going to be my go-to panic method of closing miters if I need to do this.
And that just proves the point that there's a million different ways to get things done in woodworking, and there's not really a quote-unquote proper way, and take your time to dial things in and set them up properly, because slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. Which I should remind myself, because... Not super fun, but after the glue up, the box was a little warpy, a little twisty. I think it might have been because I was gluing it up on my work table that's not super flat and has like a little kink in the middle. It's gonna take an hour or two and get the high sides down. Just gonna take a block plane. Manual labor, a couple hours for me. Hopefully just a couple seconds for you. Sometimes I have to feel like a real woodworker. Now that the hand planing is done, next I had to take care of this pretty long crack in the center of my panel. Traditional bow ties feel a little rigid and sharp and didn't fit what I thought was the aesthetic of a newborn's furniture piece, so I designed my own with softer edges that felt like they fit the part. It took 2 iterations. The first was just a little too thin, and the bow tie proportionally didn't feel very balanced. I had a version that worked well with my 1/8" brass bushing setup in my router, and that I felt like had good compositional balance. So, quick breakdown on the simplest way to use router templates for inlays. Step 1, with no bushing, cut out your positives. Step 2, mark where you want your bow ties with the positives. Step 3, with the bushing out, use the template to cut out the negatives. Step 4, refine for fit. Eventually, I want to use the actual bow tie and a marking knife to get a really accurate layout for inlays because it makes it that much more precise. But even without doing much chisel work, these inlays fit in pretty well. Real quick step, routing out a dado for the bottom panel, chiseling out the corners, and fitting it. The bottom panel was just a 1/2" piece of scrap plywood that I had. Now it's going pretty smooth. A few issues earlier, but all of it taken care of, and staying on course and making steady progress. Mental note, philosophy moment. But now that the Carcass is done, we'll move on to the base. This base was heavily inspired by one of Sean Boyd's designs with a long arc underneath. I wanted to keep it simple and still find a way to incorporate some subtle curves or arcs because I really like that look. Pretty simple for this, make 2 identical boards and temporarily join them together. Mark your arc. For this I used a thin offcut to make a nice curve. Cut the majority of it on the bandsaw, refine it with the oscillating belt sander, then smooth it all out with the orbital. And I'm always a fan of roundovers for these, so I put a 3/4 inch roundover on the curve and stopped right before the flat section. Then I hand sanded using rasps, sanding blocks, sandpaper, my hands, to refine it and get it all to blend evenly. To keep with the theme of simple for the base, to assemble it, I just used dominoes again to make the glue up quick and easy. The 2 side rails are short, rounded over pieces with some negative space on the top and bottom for a subtle shadow detail. And the last part to the base is installing some leveling feet to make sure that whatever ground it's on, it can lay flat. The last step for the Carcass was to add the recess on the front to have space for your hand to open the lid.
It's a non-critical measurement, so I use the same method of making an arc, except on this one I made a template using some scrap 1/4-inch plywood that I had. After using the jigsaw and the router, I got everything to blend together using hand sanding and some files. And the last part of this build was to make the lid. I'm not sure why I didn't record making the frame, but it was basically like making a picture frame. Here I'm cutting off the leftover material from splines that I glued in, making the most of the space I had to be comfortable using a pull saw. Then getting everything else finished off with a block plane. The idea here was to do a power carved walnut top inside the frame of the lid, because I want to keep practicing my power carving, and it's pretty fun, even though it's a little time consuming once you get through it. Essentially the top is a picture frame, so I added a rabbet on the inside of the frame where the walnut panel will sit, and an 1/8 inch round over detail to soften it all up. Next I had to pick out my walnut boards for the top, and I had a pretty nice surprise after milling and planing them.
I had these really rough walnut boards from a long time ago, just a sale at Bonhoff. They are so curly, like almost quilty. One of the boards isn't quilted, so I'm probably gonna put that in the middle and have these stand out a little bit more, but that is just gnarly.
Now it's time to glue those boards up, and I didn't want to use dominoes because while I'm power carving, there's a chance I might run into them. To keep the glue up flat, I used these spatula panel clamps that the company sent me, and they're really convenient. Definitely recommend something like this system if you can use it. Not necessary, but a luxury that I've been enjoying. Before getting into this carving, I've got to make sure the panel fits into the frame a little loosely to account for any wood movement, so I put together my dado stack and cut some tongues on the ends. Now into power carving. It's a pretty tedious process, but I really enjoy it because it feels really sculptorly, and you can see everything take shape as you make several passes. I start by sketching a simple pattern on the wood and then going over with Sharpie for a very clear line. Then with an angle grinder and a cut-saw disc, I slowly make my way towards those lines, getting a gradual slope towards them. And I'll use chalk and a level to make sure I'm doing things evenly, and then just go back and forth until it's in a place that I like. After the angle grinder, then I'll use a die grinder if needed, a Dremel if needed, flap wheels, and lots of aggressive sanding either by hand or with my orbital to get all the marks gone. The carving is the fun part. The sanding is the part that I wish I could skip forward through in real life because it definitely takes some time to get the micro gouges all sanded away. To mount the panel into the lid, I got a little experimental. I pre-finished the lid before mounting it so the glue wouldn't adhere as much. Then I placed the slightly undersized panel inside the frame and glued in some walnut runners to the lid to hold the frame in place. I reinforced it all with some brad nails to give it mechanical and shear strength, so in theory the panel should be able to expand as it needs to, but if anything happens I'll definitely be able to come by and tweak it, and it should be inside a temperature controlled environment, so not too worried. Now that all the pieces are constructed, the last thing to do is apply finish, then bring it all together. For this build I'm using Osmo Poly X in satin for the first time, and I'm liking it. Easy to apply, 2 coats, and brings the natural tone of the wood out evenly, really easily. With all the finish applied and the hardware put together, we've got the finished piece. This was a fun one to make, and having the timeline of a birth that came a little sooner than expected was definitely a little different. But as always, most of the fun is in ideating, creating, and making something that can be meaningful to someone or someone's. So, thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed it, a like and subscribe would be very much appreciated as I keep finding my way through this new world I'm entering. Just like my friend's new baby, I'm a newborn in all this, and I'm ready for some new experiences.